Hello, friends. It is so great to see you. Thanks for being here. It is time for class. Our topic is tarot in sections. Tarot separates itself from every other tool of divination. I'm going to say this, in that the way it works in sections is unique and very specifically helpful to the process. Like we could say, well, I Ching, runes have sections. Lenormand is a specific system, certainly. But I think we could say that the scope and depth of the different sections of the tarot deck, there's no other system like it. And the more that we look at these sections and think about them, the easier tarot becomes. And this is true in a number of different ways. One is in learning tarot. Two is in remembering the cards. Three is in the interpretation, when it's actually the cards on the table and how you're interpreting. Four is in the spiritual study of tarot. So what we're going to learn tonight will help you wherever you are on your tarot journey. If you happen to be watching the replay, that's great. Drop a comment. Wherever you're watching us from, say hi. And as you have questions or comments, please let us know. Thank you so much for being here. And of course, a special shout out to the members and the moderators. I'm Christiana Gaudet. I am your Tarot Fairy Godmother. I'm so happy to see you here. Let's hop on over to CardCam and have a conversation. Now, so good to see all of you. Yay. Hello to all of you. Thanks for being here. So what I've done so far is I've got the two primary sections. When we talk about the sections of tarot, we're going to start big and then go down smaller. And so the first thing we have to think about is major arcana versus minor arcana. And when we think about this, I'm going to say something here. I am going to share with you how this all works for me. My goal in doing this is not so much that you should adopt what works for me because it's the best way. It's only the best way for me. It may not be the best way for you. But I feel like if you think about this and figure out how it works for you, this is going to be helpful. So we're going to start with major arcana versus minor arcana. Now, what are the differences between the two? We know they're different structurally. We also tend to think of the major arcana, very literally. The word arcana means secrets. And so we're talking major secrets and lesser secrets. Major arcana, minor arcana. And when we're learning tarot, the first thing we're going to think about is that there are only 22 of 78 are major. And so if we're thinking about those major arcana cards as the important, big spiritual lessons in life, we're going to have way fewer of them than we're going to have mundane stuff. And we know that. We know that because there are so many fewer major arcana cards. So when we study tarot, we think of the major arcana as the big spiritual lessons. We also think of them as the big archetypes. Now, there are tarotists who will say that the only archetypes in tarot are in the major arcana. Disagree. I disagree. How is the Ace of Swords not the archetype of Excalibur? How is the Ace of Cups not the Holy Grail. So I think archetypes are really throughout the deck, but we do see in those 22 majors, we do see sort of a more solid sense of archetypal wisdom. Now, I've also heard people say that in a reading, major arcana cards will be what you can't change, minor arcana will be what you can. I would love to know from you, have you heard this? Do you believe this? And does it show up this way in your tarot practice? Let me know. For me, it really doesn't. I fully believe that in a reading, the cards will speak the way they need to speak. And a major arcana card may speak of something spiritual or mundane, and a minor arcana card may speak of something spiritual or mundane. I would argue that some of the most spiritual images are major arcana, but tell me the 10 of Pentacles in certain contexts is not spiritual. Mix you here, right? I don't believe this. It really depends on the reading. Oh, and Ness, yes, good to see you. You're talking about sections as number groups. Very helpful. Yes, I am hoping we'll have time to get there. We're starting big and working down, so I'm hoping we have time to get there, but absolutely yes. Ness, I love that you use this word. I've heard and read that for sure. I find it restricting. I agree. Like, I would say do not in your own mind limit the possibility of what a tarot card can do. We only have we only have 78 cards to describe all of the human existence. So in my opinion, we should let the cards act the way they want to or can in that environment. Jeannie, I don't believe it. Life is flexible, and I see the cards as tools for insight, not dogma. I agree. But then the question is, like, when we're studying tarot, we do see the major arcana as sort of these deep spiritual lessons, and that's real. If you have a reading where there's a lot of major arcana cards, or if you have a reading where there's very few major arcana cards, what do you say about that? What information does that give you in a reading? You know, if we're not going to say, and I think we've got pretty much unanimous so far, Jen Schultz, I don't particularly buy into this. 3 of Swords can be just as soul-crushing as the Tower, damn straight, yeah. Ben, Libra does tarot, and thank you, both Jen and Ben, for being members. Heard it, don't believe it. I feel the cards come when they come. It can be big things, little things with either arcana. I feel the majors, sometimes I have a bit more weight in getting the point over. Yeah. Betty, good to see you. Thanks for being a member. Each card has a message and is important to a reading, not mundane. Right, and it is true that in a reading, there may be some very mundane meanings. We may talk about which shoes you should buy. But, we could talk about whatever. So, right, I'm with you, Mixura. I'd rather get the Tower than the 3 of Swords. So I think we have real consensus that we're not going to go with the idea that in a reading, major arcana cards are going to be that which you cannot change, and minor arcana cards are going to be that which you can. So what is it? Like, I'll interpret it card by card based on context, intuition, all the things. But if it's weighty in the sense of, say you're doing an 11-card spread and 5 or 6 or more are major arcana, what are you going to say about that reading, about this time in the client's life? What are you going to say? Okay, Jeannie, I like this. Mostly major feels like the reading is about strong transitional times. Right, opportunity for transition, sure. I will often say, pay attention. This is a time to really pay attention. The decisions you make really, really matter. Sometimes I will also say, I always like to believe we have spiritual guidance around us. But looking at the cards here today, I really feel like the hand of a higher power is strongly moving in your life right now. And so just the idea that the more major arcana cards, the more spiritual guidance there may be. That's something I think about. And just the more big things. And I think this is what Jeannie is talking about in terms of transition. Big things, life things, internal things, big things. Now, if there's a lot of minors, what do we do with that? I'm going to say chop wood, carry water. I'm going to say don't overthink things and don't over spiritualize things. What do you say? How do you see it? If there are few or none major arcana cards in a spread, what do you say about that? And does it ever make you think that you would want to encourage someone toward more spiritual thought? Like there's so little spirituality here that I want to encourage more spiritual thought. Like, I don't know that that's ever happened to me, but I wonder if it could. Oh, I love that. Make sure don't place more meaning on this than it warrants. That's good. I like it. So now let's break it down even further. Starting with the majors. Now, the first thing to think about is the 21 numbered cards versus the Fool. And this is important because I would argue that in a lot of ways, the Fool is sort of the most important card in the deck. It is the star of the story told by tarot and represents each one of us on our journey through life. Ben, with fewer majors, the major would be the headline and the minors would tell the story. Oh, I like that. Or give the filter to read the minors through. Right. So, this is such a beautiful thing. Imagine it. And again, we're talking a larger spread, 7 cards, 10 cards, 11 cards, 12 cards, something like that. If there's only one major, doesn't that major suddenly take on a metric F-ton more importance because there is only one? I think that makes so much sense. Oh my goodness. Hey, Jarella, good to see you. So yeah, I like that. So, I really do believe in our study and in our understanding of tarot, we need to give the Fool a lot of weight. And when the Fool comes up in a reading, I always think it's important. But sometimes, the Fool will not be the most important card in the spread, even though the Fool is the most important card in the deck. The big question, though, and Ness has already mentioned numbers, grouping by numbers. The big question here, there's 2 schools of thought. When we start to group by number, which we're not going to do until later. Hey, Caroline, good to see you. When we start to group by number, do you not include the Fool and just this is the numbered major arcana and this is what we deal with, and the Fool does not come out and play? Or do we give the Fool the number 22, therefore making the Fool a 4 with Death and the Emperor? Those are 2 very legitimate ways to do it. I really love Mary Kay Greer, but this is where she and I break from each other. She does it this way, I do not. Trey, you do. I see the Fool as 22. Makes sense. Perfect. No, a heretic in this group, maybe, except you're allowed to disagree with me and I won't call you a heretic. And if Mary Kay Greer does it, I cannot find fault with it. So yeah, does anyone else make the Fool card 22. And if you do, that's such an interesting cycle. Fool. I mean, really, actually, if you think about it numerically, it would go Emperor, Death, Fool in that order. And what do we learn from that little story? That there is a great story there, that starting with the Emperor, if you always have to be all buttoned up and in your little box, you can't go anywhere. You have to embrace change with death. And then you have to recognize yourself as the Fool, which I think the Emperor has a hard time doing, right? Right, Trey, the Fool is associated with Uranus, exactly. And in numerology, the number 4, oh, I didn't know this. Well, that gives that a ton more credence in my mind. You may have just converted me. The Fool is associated with Uranus, and in numerology, the number 4 is also associated with Uranus. Makes sense. Hey, Katie Kondo, so good to see you over on Vertical. Glad you're here. All right. So the next thing we got to look at is the septenaries. Now, I had been working with septenaries for as long as I've been working with tarot, pretty much. But I did not know to call them septenaries until I learned that from Benabel Wen. And I cannot tell you if she originated that term or not. So if anyone knows if she's the originator of that, or if, someone else in tarot history did, I don't know. And I will say that we all have our own take on the septenaries. Oh, Jeannie, what's Uranus associated with? Let's play with that actually for a minute. I'll give you my take. It's about expedition. It's about deviance. It's about learning through doing, not by sitting in a classroom. It's about doing things your own way, which is very Fool in my mind. Trey, what do you think? All right. Or anybody else. Innovation, change, like a lightning strike. Sure. Which again, very Fool. Very Fool. Hey, Smile Soul 20, good to see you. All right. So the idea that we break the 21 numbered cards into 3 groups is it's pretty canon. It really is. But what those 3 groups mean to us is, that may be very individual. Now, for me, the septenaries are super important. They're important in how we learn and understand the cards. And if I'm doing a reading and I have multiple majors, I am going to want to clock which septenaries. And that's going to be an additional piece of information. So if they're all from the 3rd septenary, we are really literally talking about spiritual enlightenment. That's what we are here talking about. If they're from the 2nd septenary, it's really about your emotional well-being and how you're processing things. If it's the 1st septenary, we're really down at the bottom rungs of the bottom rungs of Maslow's hierarchy, and dealing with basic, how do I adult? How do I live life on the planet? Audrey M., Uranus is the planet of freedom, revolution, rebellion, and reform. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being a member. Oh, I love that you're using Wiser with the astrological symbols. Yes, right. Having that pointed out to me for the first time, right? My first Wiser deck came to me from Ben. I've worn out numerous ones since then. I love this deck. And I never really recognized the symbols here until Audrey pointed them out this week last week, this month, at our meetup. And Jen says body, mind, spirit. Yes. Yes. Body, mind, spirit. That really is how I see it. Absolutely. And so that's a great exercise for you to do. And we'll be doing like a majors only kind of a class coming up in the next few months where we will do that exercise. But on your own, like go through and think about how do all of these cards relate to like the basic lessons of life on the planet? How do all of these cards relate to the basic lessons of how to be emotionally stable? And how do all these cards, especially starting with the devil, reflect the journey toward enlightenment? Now, I will also say that I have sort of created in my own mind other smaller groupings within the majors, chronological, that isn't the right word, numerologically. Have you done that as well? For example, I just made you backwards. Boo hiss. For example, what did I do here? Okay. For example, I see, actually, I'll bring the Fool back here. I see these three cards as the three cards of sort of basic learning. Learn by doing, learn by studying with tools and using tools, and learn through sacred texts and looking within. That's one. I also see these three cards as the three cards of authority. Authority of the home, authority of the community, authority of the church. I see these four cards. Excuse me. I see these four cards as the cards of acceptance. Each of them has a lesson of acceptance that we must learn in order to be emotionally healthy. So you may come up with your own groupings. Now, I also have some groupings that are not numerological. For example, here, these are the three cards of higher education for me. So we have your bachelor's degree, your master's degree, your PhD, and the number of times that has been the case. And yes, those of you who are here looking for readings, I do readings here very often, but not tonight. This is a class. Trey, thank you so much for helping out there. So I'm curious to know, do any of you have sort of your own major arcana groupings? Now, the other thing, of course, that I do with major arcana groupings is the elements of the major arcana. And that's something, I had been a full-time reader for probably 10 years before I started playing with the elements of the majors, but it does kind of matter to me now. And so that's another way I'll group them. All right. So let me know your thoughts about this. How do you group majors? How do they make sense to you? And now let's talk about the minors. And right away with the minors, what do we think about? We think about elements, and we think about how, oh, Trey, yeah, I love this too. Yeah, the devil being at the front of the third, like, sorry, there is no spiritual enlightenment without facing this and this. Right. Shadow work. Exactly. Like there is no way that you're getting to any of this really enlightened stuff until you do this. And we know that in a reading, these may not talk about enlightened things and these may not talk about shadow work. But when we're studying tarot as a book of spiritual wisdom, this is what we learn from it. And sometimes in a reading, those things show up that way as well. Ben, thank you so much for being a member for more than 3 years, and thanks for being a moderator. I use clusters of cards, majors and minor, that I would want to see for the context of the question. So like a love reading, what cards do I want to see and not want to see? Oh, that is so interesting. Oh man, I have to think about that. Like, do I do that? I don't know, man. That is real. That is a really interesting thing. I'm not sure I've really played with that. But I mean, in a way, like there are definitely cards that I look for as indicators of particular things. And then if that particular thing is happening and I didn't get those indicators, I'm going to wonder why. Like, for example, I did a reading recently, and what was coming out in conversation, and it was clear in conversation that a lot of the problems and consternation that I was seeing on the table, it was all coming from this person's mother. This person's mother was the source, was the architect of all of this. And yet the mother, like, the Empress did not show up. There were no queens. Like there was nothing that was like going to point me to the mother specifically. And so I thought that was really interesting. And there were ways. There were ways that we were able to interpret that later, and it made sense. Oh, Jen, this is really smart. Yeah, let's go back to the septenaries and play with this. And I'm going to tell you that this is such a juicy topic that in the time we have together, we may not get to all of it. Like we're going to talk about as much of it as we can. And we'll do another class down the line that talks about more of it. Because Jen, I think this is smart and deserves our consideration. So Jen, let me just get these back here because I screwed them all up. Jen wants to know if we can make any correlation between like the first card of each septenary, the second card of each septenary, so on and so forth. And that is an interesting question that I have wondered about and have not really studied or pursued or came up with any concept or context on. So I would like us now as a group to take a look and see if we can answer that question. Magician. Okay. First septenary, restored. Hey, Joyous Ocean, good to see you. Second septenary. Okay, here we go. So now the question is, these cards are each the first cards of their septenary. Do we see something holding them together? If you were to see all three of them in a reading, would you say something with it? Trey, I see correlations with the Magician and the Devil. And Ness, I can see the Venn diagram kind of thing. Sure. And so let's go here. Is there more? I mean, here there certainly is. Like the High Priestess and the Hermit are really connected. It's an interesting thing. I think this is as far as I've gotten in my exploration. It feels a little forced. Oh, Ben, maybe not. Maybe you got it. Got it. Ben, all three speak to me about trying to control and manipulate. All three can have control and manipulate. Oh my gosh. And honestly, here, all three have introspection. Like if you don't do it here, you have to do it here. And then if you don't do it here, you got to do it here. So, okay, now I'm buying it. So, okay, let's keep going. I mean, with the Empress and the Wheel of Fortune, I mean, the thing I see here is like the cycles of womanhood. And, you know, the Star as a naked woman, I don't know what to do about that, but I do see this very feminine journey here. And Trey, the first three speak of power. So maybe there's something here. And it's getting deep up in here, people. It's getting deep. Look at this. Look at this. We've got the government, we've got the justice system, and none of it should be trusted. Oh my gosh. Rebecca, I think so. I'm not fully putting my finger on it yet. Need to think more on this. But I know, Christiana, you refer to the devil as the gatekeeper. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So I think there's more to this than I was willing to give it at any time earlier. So thank you very much, Jen. Yeah, I wonder if Benabel has looked at this as well. Jen Schultz, thanks for that. That was a deeper exploration than I've ever been able to do with this before. Yeah, I think we could have a lot of fun with this. So yeah, I suppose there is. Okay, now. So the first thing we're going to talk about when we look at the minor arcana is the tight correlation between the minor arcana and the four elements. You know, and as I said earlier, I learned to read tarot without any elemental associations for the majors, but I certainly learned these. Oh my gosh, Trey, the Hierophant, the Hanged Man, and the Sun sounds like Christianity. Ben, that was very interesting. I know, my mind is kind of blown here. Ben, the second and third could also be about isolation, not integrating perhaps. Third, the three definitely cycles and making the best of situations. Wow, and Jen says, thank you for that. That was deeper than I thought. People, that's why we do this. That's why we come together to have these conversations. Because as soon as you get a group of people to contemplate the cards in a structured way, new thoughts emerge, and it's really helpful for all of us. So that was cool. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So one of the things I hear a lot from people especially from like new students, when talking about the four elements being so tightly connected to the minors, is they have a very hard time interpreting cards. For example, if it's a question about money and finances and all cups shows up, what do we do about that? If it's a question about love and romance and all swords show up, like, I think one mistake that we make is this idea that although these cards are primarily each about their element, they go visit each other all the time. And every card can be interpreted in context regardless. What do you think about that? Has that been a question for you? What are your thoughts there? Now, when we talk about tarot study, I absolutely love to look at the stories that we see in the minor arcana And, it is so interesting because we think about the major arcana as the fool's journey. And we tell stories of either the fool becoming each archetype or visiting and learning from each archetype, going from magician to world. I also think the fool is, in a way, each of the aces. And we can see each ace as the start of a fool's journey through the suit. And so when we're learning the cards, we can see these stories that emerge. And these stories all have cycles, right? Like, okay, these first three cards, a cycle of creating something and coming to success, but then we're going to get all weird about the money. You know what happens when it gets all weird about the money, right? And so then we're going to have to balance that out. And then we're going to have to work super hard and learn and grow and build our wealth again. And so in this suit, not only do we learn about the cards, we learn about life. This idea of fortunes gained and lost and gained again, which is life. Like if you feel like you're out after the first loss, you're gonna be. Like that's the bottom line. You're gonna be, but you shouldn't be. So that is a way that we use these sections of tarot, being the suits, to help us learn from the cards, to help us study the cards, and to help us understand their elemental messages. Now, it's interesting to note that sometimes you will buy a tarot deck and it will be ordered with the kings up front. And that's a fun story to look at too. When we do it that way, we can think of the king and queen as mother and father God, the knights and pages as we, their human children. And this becomes the situation into which we are born, and we work our way to the source. So finding these stories within these suits is a very fun and helpful pursuit. It's also true that if you are doing a reading, again, with a larger spread, and you find a run within suit, say you get the ace, 2, 3, and it doesn't matter what order they're in, and it doesn't matter what position they fall in. You're going to want to interpret each card in its position, but then you're going to want to say, wow, we've got this run. And so what is the story we see here? And to me, this particular story is a story of take your ideas and your plans and your goals and your inspiration forward to success. Betty, what if you looked at the cards like individual frames, like in a comic book, each part of the story? Absolutely, yes. And that's a whole exercise. That is a great exercise for your tarot journal. Absolutely. So then, when we think about sections in the deck, we also have to think about the court as its own section. And I think for a lot of people, the court becomes confusing. And I think it becomes confusing because we say that the court can represent people. And my question to you is, do other cards represent people? In a reading, either the significators that we have for people. My husband is always this card. I am always that card. Hey, Della, good to see you. The question is, are these usually court cards or not? Do you have people who are the High Priestess or the 9 of Pentacles? Can any card represent a person? or is it always just going to be the court cards? That's my question to you. In my own work, I would say, that any card can represent a person. Court cards very often represent people, but very rarely in a reading do I try to figure out which court card is which person, if that makes sense. Like if there's two kings and I'm reading for someone and I find out it's a heterosexual single woman and she's choosing between two men, I may not go as deep as trying to figure out which king is which, unless that's going to be specifically helpful to the decision making. If I see pages and knights, I might recognize that you have children and this is the number of children. I may or may not try to figure out which one is which. Oh, I love this. Ness, when I was doing the work from Nancy's book, the Six of Cups always came up as my grandma somehow. That is beautiful. I love that so much. It makes so much sense. The Six of Cups being the card of the childhood home. Like that is beautiful. Rebecca, the Nine of Pentacles represents a certain person in my life. Yeah, that totally makes sense. So I think we have to recognize again, when we think about tarot sections, they are not necessarily helpful in limiting what the cards can mean. They're helpful in study, they're helpful in remembering, and when they come up together, they're helpful in giving added meaning to a reading. But I think we're finding over and over again that we don't like the idea of limiting what cards can be. Right, Nash, she took care of us a lot when we were little. That totally makes sense. Audrey M., I feel as though any card represents an archetypal role, person, like the Seven of Pentacles is a planner, investor, farmer. Absolutely. Absolutely. That makes perfect sense. So then, if we think about the court, these 16 cards, as their own section, what can we say about them that is uniquely theirs? I've always been fascinated by the fact that there are 16 court cards and 16 Myers-Briggs personality types. Right, Ness, I get a bit paranoid about who a court card could be in a simple reading. And the fact is they may be nobody, because each court card can give a directive or a prediction. Right, Del, I was going to say that. All right. So I would say we have to recognize that, yeah, they might be people. Trey, you still don't know what your Myers-Briggs type is. That's so funny. My thing is, like, if I see a lot of court cards, I'm going to recognize there's a lot of people in this person's life, or there's a lot of people they're answering to. And if it's a lot of pages and knights or a lot of reversed court cards, and they don't have kids, then I'm going to wonder, why are you in the midst of so many ridiculous and immature people? But again, I'm not going to dive in and try to figure out which court card is which person. So for me, like when I think about the court, I think the job it does is, if people are important in the story, and I mean, they always are, but if it's really all about the people around you, you may see that because a bunch of court cards come up. But I think it's really important with the court that we not rely on thinking about them as people, and we learn to see them as directives. Nurture the truth, speak the truth. Nurture your creativity. Pursue money. Be a leader and do the right thing. Go to school for something that really excites you. So I think that sometimes the court section gives us more problems than it should because we don't learn to do that. All right. So the next section we're going to talk about is by rank and number. So when we say by rank, what I mean is all the pages are their own section. All the knights are their own section. And one thing that's very specific about the knights as a section is they speak to a quality of time more than most other cards. And I think that's really super interesting. What do I mean by that? Well, the Knight of Swords is fast. And the Knight of Pentacles is slow. And so that's an interesting thing that the group of knights has in common. So when we think about that, one of the things that's very helpful about looking at sections by rank and by number is that you can have keywords for each number and each rank, and that's going to help you in your interpretation. So for example, what are keywords that we have for pages? Youth, learning, and communication. And so that will help you interpret and understand all of these cards. What are keywords that we have for knights? Youth, pursuit, and travel. For queens, feminine and nurturance. And for kings, masculine and leadership. Is that sort of gender biased? It totally is. But, you know, you have to think about where tarot came from. And so there that is. All right. So then we can think about this more fully when we think about the numbers, because that then brings the majors back in. And I wonder how many of you do this. What am I missing? I'm missing pentacles. How many of you do this? Okay, so if you get a lot of aces, there's going to be a lot of new beginnings, a lot of need to initiate. But there are also 1 cards in the majors, right? Magician, where are you? Well, the Magician belongs there too. So when you think about that, like, do you see the qualities of 1, the qualities of ace in the Wheel of Fortune and the Sun? Like, what do you think about that? Does that work for you? Like, I certainly do see it in the Magician. I'm trying to see the Magician right now. Where are you? There you are. I mean, certainly the Magician literally is an initiate. So I literally see this idea of new study, new beginnings with the Magician. He is literally card 1. So I don't have an issue with that at all. Do you see, like, how does that 1 energy show up in the Wheel of Fortune and the Sun? Do you see it? Now, I don't really, I mean, I guess with the wheel, each time it revolves, is it something new? It comes round again. It comes round to the beginning again. The Sun is certainly a child. But I think for me, it's just a matter of, if I see these 1 cards in a spread, it's going to give that extra information of, be ready for new beginnings. Be ready for new perspectives. Be ready to do things a new way. So a lot of times, the way we interpret the sections is about giving added meaning in addition to how we've interpreted the individual cards. Okay, Ben, I do with the wheel. The potential for new things just might not be the things you wanted. Sure, yeah, the wheel can bring new things, and clearly the sun is literally a new day. I mean, literally. So I think that actually does make sense. So we can think about number groupings, not just with the minor arcana, but also with the majors. Now, I want to circle back to something that I think it was something that Ben said earlier, that he also groups cards according to, like, these are the best cards for this particular topic. And that's an interesting thing. I will occasionally group cards based on images. Like, for example, if we're thinking from a weight perspective, and no matter what deck I'm working with, I am usually thinking from a weight perspective. So the Six of Pentacles and Justice both have scales. So if both of those cards show up, it may be someone who is dealing with a weight issue. And obviously, like, if you're sitting in front of someone, you may notice that, right? And then do you want to broach the subject or not? But if they're on the phone and you have no idea what they look like, you know, and you say, well, is weight an issue for you? And it could be underweight or overweight either way. But that's another thing. So for me, the sections are really about, in a lot of ways, added understanding and study, and added information when you do the reading. Oh my gosh, Trey, this is really interesting. I love this. Trey says, the wheel has the 4 elements, which are also literally on the magician's table. I hadn't thought of that. And that's brilliant, right? But that brings us to a whole other grouping, which brings the world in, because we have the 4 elements, which are also the 4 fixed zodiac signs, which are also the 4 writers of the Gospels. So, you know, that's another way we may group them. Azra, good to see you. Thanks for joining us on Facebook. We're not doing readings today. This is a class. Thanks for being here. I do live readings quite often. Please do come back another time. Della, the Queen, say more. Say more. We are coming to the end of our time. My question to you is, well, first of all, what questions or comments do you have? Is this a practice that you already have? Are there ways you do this that I have not covered? And are there things here that are going to get put into your practice in some way? Oh, the Queens. No, see, I did not know this. Okay, this is new information for me. Della, the Queens represent the fixed signs, the Knights are mutable, and the Kings are cardinal. That's really interesting. I've never heard that before, and I kind of love it. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Did other people know that? Trey, it depends on the system, of course. Golden Dawn attributed the fixed signs to Kings, Queens cardinal, and Knights mutable. So Knights have stayed mutable the whole time. And that's just it. And I think the value here is not so much which system is right. Whichever system works for you, whichever system you like, is going to be the right system. The thing that's valuable is the recognition that these systems have meaning, and we can interpret them and add them into our practice in whatever way. So let's shuffle the deck now. And this is just going to be a quick sample spread. and we're going to play with whatever sections show up. And you know what? Let's actually use the teensy tiny deck so you can see it. Okay, so I'm going to use my 11 card Celtic Cross, but we're not even going to care about the, hey Jessica, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. We're not even going to care about the positions. We're just going to get those cards out there so we can play and find which sections are showing up and what additional information this is going to give us. Like, for instance, we already have 2 knights. There's 1 major. And we have no idea who this is a spread for. This is just a sample spread to see what you might see. Ooh, so you see we have a lot of court cards already. 2 knights and a page. Right? Aren't these tiny? They're cute. Look at that. King of Wands. Okay, here's another major. So we've got 2nd septenary, 3rd septenary. Okay, so we see 3 majors. To me, that would be like a normal amount of majors, neither a lot nor a little for an 11 card spread. Like mathematically, it makes sense to me. I will say, you know, and this is another way. Yeah, right, Trey, ending with the devil, right? This is another way that the sections work with me. Like, the final outcome card is really important, and the foundational card is really important. So the fact, and both of these are from the 3rd septenary, so I'm going to say there really is some spiritual work to be done. Now, absolutely. So Audrey, wands are prominent, and look how they're in this little shape here, pointing to all this other stuff. Like, that's important to me as well. So, like, I let them come out of their position and interact with one another. But if they happen to make a shape or show up in interesting positions, even like that is interesting to me. Now, a lot of court cards. So again, I would say a lot of people. The people are very important. The fact that we have 2 knights, what is it that we're trying to pursue? Like, there's so much question about what to pursue. So without ever identifying a single card or card position, you can get some basic truths just by looking at the distribution of the sections. Now, we've done lots of classes on trends and distribution, but the difference here is we're talking about studying them within their sections as well, and how studying within the section gives us a lot of opportunity to better understand the cards and how the cards help us spiritually as we study them. Oh, I love that, Ben. 2 of Pentacles and Temperance are both juggling and mixing. That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. In our last minute, anyone else have anything else you want to say about these cards or about this class in general? I want to thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate you. I will be back tomorrow at noon with your Friday weekly wrap-up. And, you know, again, special shout out to the members, the moderators. Thanks for being here. Thanks for making all of this possible. I really appreciate you being here and being part of our digital village. Thanks for being here. Take good care and have a fabulous evening. Be good.